Okay guys, I think I have found one of the elusive sewing machines, and I know they're really scary. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to sneak up on it and see if we can like get it so we can play around with it. So let's go. I think I found one. Here we go. Okay. There it is. Okay, it looks pretty docile to me, so let's sneak up to it. There we go. To check that it was okay. Let's see what happens. Whoa, we gotta get out of here. Okay, I think we can talk to it for really nice. Can we be really nice to the sewing machine? I think it'll be okay. Alright, let's learn a little bit more about these scary, scary, scary machines. So here is my sewing machine, and it's considered vintage because it's about 30 years old, which makes me vintage. I think, what is it? No, it's like retro if it's 20 and vintage if it's 50. So I guess it's retro. I don't know. It's a Singer Merit 1872, and as you can see, doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles. I can do straight stitch or zigzags. I can change the needle position and the size of the stitch, and that's pretty much it. And it's actually great to show you guys the basics of using your freehand stitching foot, because there aren't all these like contraptions and like 16 million different stitch types. Also, as you can see, this is the tension knob, and it's missing the cover because I decided to fix it myself. And the cover doesn't go on anymore, but it still works. First things first, I've gotten a lot of questions about what kind of sewing machine should I get. And I'm going to go off of advice that I have gotten from friends, which is if you can find a sewing machine that's metal, as you can see, it's this whole part is all metal. If you can find one like this, it's better than the plastic ones. My plastic Singer sewing machine actually snapped and broke. See, the plan was, since this one wasn't working properly, instead of going to get it fixed, we just bought I think it was something like $80 one at Walmart. It was a Singer. It had like 20 different stitch things, and it was made out of plastic. And I was filming a workshop. I was working on it. I was literally filming the video, and the sewing machine, something in this area up here snapped, and I could hear the plastic snap, and it made a funny sound, and then it completely died. But this one works just fine. It's, you know, a steady machine, and it does what I need. And that's pretty much all you need, is just a sewing machine that will do that. When I got here to Arizona, I didn't have this with me, and I borrowed my neighbor's, and she actually got a Singer machine from around the same time period for $1 at Goodwill. So you never know where you can find one. So let me try to answer some questions people have. First off, this is what your machine looks like when you get it. You have this foot here, and this is actually called a zigzag foot. And you have all these controls, you know, straight, zigzag. This is the length of your stitches. Usually when you're working on mixed media work, you want to keep your stitches pretty large. If you are going through paper and you keep them really small, it's actually going to perforate the paper and you can rip it apart. So keep them big. You have a bobbin down here. This gives people so much trouble in the world. They're usually considered evil bobbins. And this is what I had to get fixed on my machine. If you have an older machine, I really, truly recommend going to usually it's like a vacuum repair shop, just sewing repair, or you can find a quilting store that kind of like champions your brand. Really, I recommend getting it fixed and tuned up, and it costs about $50 to $70, but they really know what they're doing and they will really fix it. Or else this will happen where your tension thing will not go back on it. So you have all this stuff, and what you want when you're doing freehand stitching is you want their darning foot. I'm just going to hold it here until the camera kind of focuses on it. And it looks really funny. It's got like this spring here, and then this part is clear, and it's got like this little like slit here, and it looks really big compared to what your zigzag foot looks like. This is what you want to do freehand stitching. You can attempt to do it with your zigzag foot, but it's not going to work, honestly. And you have to know if your machine has a low shank or a high shank. And when I went into the sewing shop and she asked me that, all I could think was people in prison, like with shivs, like that shank. Like I was like, oh man, they like totally, sewing machines don't murder you. You can sew through your fingers, but you probably won't. So don't worry about it. What you need to know is shank, and shank is actually the distance between this little knob here to attach things and this up here. And this machine is a low shank machine. So that's why I have this size foot. And as you can see, the top part here of the foot actually hits the bar here. And you need that because that facilitates the spring and the moving up and down of the actual darning foot. I'm going to take this off again because I need to show you one other thing. These are your, they're like your feet. And what this does is it actually, it grabs the fabric and helps hold it and pull it through. And the problem is when you're doing freehand stitching, you don't want it to pull the fabric through. And some machines will actually have it that if you take this part off of the machine, there'll be a switch right here that'll turn them on and off down here. And my machine, unfortunately, is a machine where you actually have to get a thing to cover it. Let me see if I can find. They usually look like something like this, and it'll go on your machine. This actually is not the one for this machine, but it'll go on your machine and snap in so you have the smooth surface to stitch over. And I can't find it right now. The alternative, if you don't want to go searching for whatever cover fits your exact machine, is you can actually take, this is the Starbucks gift card, a very rare one by the way, that's why I still have it. And you can actually cut it and actually cut with your X-Acto knife a little square for that opening and then tape it on here with masking tape, and that is a very crafty, cheap substitute. I don't put anything over my feet and it doesn't damage. I find it just as easy to do freehand stitching with the feet going as when I had a machine where the feet actually dropped. So I just, you know, leave it like that. You're not going to find, pretty much, I would say you're not going to find it at Joann Fabrics. You're not going to find it at Hobby Lobby. You have to go to an actual sewing store. You have to find a quilting store in your area that supplies your, like I said, your brand. Or you can order it online. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, how do I know if I have a low shank or a high shank? Type in the name of your machine, the brand of your machine, and the word shank. And usually you will find a website or a supplier that has these for sale, and it'll say it works on these following machines, and it'll tell you if you have a high shank or a low shank. Here we go. I've got my needle threaded. I've got my bobbin threaded. It's actually in the same color, which doesn't happen all that often. I usually keep the same color thread on here until it runs out, and then I change it. Oh, I remember now. Needles. Here are some examples of sewing needles. I think on here I have a blue one, which is a 14 for medium weight woven fabrics. This is what I use when I'm stitching stuff. So it actually, it says 90-14, and I actually also have that from stitching fabric. I just use the same needle. Honestly, some people might be more knowledgeable, and if you can leave that information in the comments, that's great, but I've just used a 90-14 needle on my sewing machine for all of my freehand projects, paper and canvas combined, and it works fine. This is actually the foot down. You heard me snap it down, but there's still room for me to move around. Now, when you go down, this doesn't even touch this. Your needle goes into your fabric, and then actually you can see this shank is pulling this up so you can move, and that's what allows you to do the freehand stitching. So like I said, you want to have it at a longer thing. There we go. There we go. So like I said, I'm just gonna I just simply stitched a heart. That's all I did, and I just moved it around with my hands to stitch a heart on there. Now there's a couple things that you need to remember. You still want to sew, when you're sewing on the sewing machine, it's used to going in this forward direction, and that's the direction where your stitches are going to be even, your stitches are going to look right, and your bobbin, which is the back here, okay, is going to work properly. And you can see here it works properly and here it has a problem, and that's because when I was doodling with it, I actually was going against the normal forward action of the sewing machine. What's cool is if you go and you look over here, there's this funny little button that looks like you're going backwards, and that's the backwards button. And what that does is it switches it, so when you're pulling the fabric, it's doing it properly. Don't fret, my little sewers to be. I will go in much more detail on how you do the doodling and such with the sewing machine in next week's video, where we're going to do a project. We're going to make something really simple, probably unfelt, but I want to just make sure that you understand the parts of the machine. Basically, what you need for next week, you need a sewing machine of some kind, and you need to find yourself a darning foot for your particular machine, and that is pretty much all you need for next week's projects. So I hope this answered some of your questions. If not, leave a comment and I will do my best to come in and answer them. As always, like and subscribe, share the video with friends. That always helps me out and gets me making more videos for you guys, because I love you all. So I will see you next week in the studio for some projects. Bye!